Ooh, ooh, ooh. WDBFradio.com. WDBFradio.com.
More people know the value of coins, stamps, objects of art, and collectibles they do not own than the values of the books in their home library shelves. Now, here's Steve the Bookman Eisenstein.
Good morning, book lovers, wherever you are. I'm your host, Steve the Bookman Eisenstein, and hopefully you are at an estate sale finding some great books. Got questions about the books you have at home? Got questions about the books you might find at the garage sales today? If you have questions like that or anything else for myself or my guest Max Roback later in the program, take out something to write with, take out something to write on, and copy down this number. That's our call-in number, 888-575-4394. That's 888-575-4394. And a sincere apology to Donald Diamond. We were supposed to have him on the show today. When I tell you that this week was the most cluster, pick a word that you usually use after cluster of a week, it was. So we're going to reschedule that show somewhere down the road. Later in the program, though, we will be joined by Max Roback. As you know, Max and I, every month, the second Saturday of each month, we're doing book talks with Max and Steve. Got some interesting topics to discuss this week. A couple of sidebars. The Book of Mormon recently sold at auction for $240,000, a copy of it. That's the highest number I'm aware of so far. I'm not saying that's the top record, but 240K, nice. Last time I saw a copy, it was about 104 or 5. So, yeah, nice to know that that market continues. On the other side of that, handwritten lyrics by Dylan sold for $52,000. So who knows? You never know what's going to sell, where you're going to find it, But what we're going to do on this show today is help you figure out what you have. If you have questions, 888-575-4394. That's 888-575-4394. And you can win rare book swag in our trivia contest questions later in the program. So in order to sell something, and we started doing some of this last week, I'm going to kind of pick it up from where we left off to a degree and expand it. If you are new to the book world and you have books, you have to be able to describe them properly in order to sell them. If you put up a post, whether you do an online catalog, whether you do a post on Facebook, however you're displaying and advertising this particular book, there is a standard format to use, okay? And the format is used in several ways, okay? The first thing you have to list is the author's name. Okay, so you got the author of the book, you got the title of the book. After the title, you've got the city of publication. After the city of publication, you have the year. After the year, you have the edition. And after the edition, you have the publisher's name and description of condition. If you vary from that format, you do so at your own peril. When you look up a book, okay, you found a book, you looked it up, you found that there were 35 copies of your title that were listed for sale on a site like Adall or a site like Via Libre, one of the reference sites that we usually go to for comparables. How do you know whose price to use? There's 35 copies that are listed. Let's say half a dozen of them are listed twice by the same person. So now you're down to like 25 copies or so. You're going to find there's a high, a low, and an average when you look at them. Okay, first and foremost, your copy has to compare exactly and preferably be in better condition than the copy that's being described. So if various dealers are listing it at various prices, you're going to find, like I said, a high end and a low end, but in the middle, there's going to be a, an average. How do you know whose prices to use? Well, that's a learning process. One of the things that might help you is if you look at the dealer's credentials, does the dealer belong to any professional book selling associations? That can give you a little bit of clue as to their background because if you use my name as an example, I belong to a group called the Florida Antiquarian Book Dealers Association, or the abbreviation FABA. So what does that mean to somebody that doesn't know me or, know anybody else in the group? It means that I was vetted by a group of my peers and have displayed professionalism throughout my career without any blemishes. And that's kind of what those listings represent. It could be something like a state association, a national association, but as long as they have a couple of letters after their name, it usually means that they were vetted by a group of their peers and, performed satisfactorily in the field. There's always going to be a difference in price, even if it's $50 to $100 or something. That's normal. So when you look at, a grouping of 35 books, let's say two or three of them are listed at $2,000 each. And let's say the rest of them are listed between $200 and $400 each. Well, that's where you see that the high end goes out. And obviously, if something was in bad condition or, wasn't the right edition, it would go for a lower price. So you can kind of rule it out in that end of it. Those are dealer asking prices when you look those things up on A, Biblio, AdWall, anything like that. The question that you have to ask yourself when you see a dealer listing price is kind of what I've suggested. Does the dealer know what they're doing? Did the book sell at the price the dealer asked for it? Did the book sell from one dealer to another with a 20% reciprocal discount? And let me throw in a new vocabulary word for everybody if you're new. It's called the reciprocal trade discount. And the key word in that is reciprocal. If you go to a show, you're doing a show, dealer to dealer there, they're going to say, do you give a trade discount? Well, if somebody's got to go first in that scenario. So, if somebody says to you, I'm in the trade and I want a dealer discount, most dealer discounts are 20%. Um, and it's just kind of a standard operating procedure. But when someone has to go first, I always say, okay, yes, we have standard dealer discounts as long as it's reciprocal. So if you have reciprocal dealer discounts, everybody's happy and everybody gets treated the same. You just want to be aware that dealer discounts should always be stated as reciprocal. Otherwise, you're going to do the giving and not the getting. When you're looking these books up on sites like AdAll, Biblio, Abe, Via Libri, one of the things that you have to know about all of those sites is those are dealer asking prices. When you are when you have inherited a room full of books, and there's every week, I just can't understand why we don't get more action, in the form of questions, because every week there were 83 new members in Vintage Rare and Antique Books this week. Of those 83, at least 25 of them inherited, anywhere from a couple of books to a room full of books. And, they don't know what to do. Well, take out something to write with and something to write on. Copy down this number, 888-575-4394. We'd love to tell you what your books are worth. But one of the things that you have to be aware of is the difference between auction prices and dealer asking prices. The dealer asking prices are represented in the sites that I mentioned earlier. Biblio, all the other ones. The best site to use if you're using those sites, in my opinion, and it's based on ease and effort, is addall.com. The reason you want to stay with addall.com in most cases is that it's a compendium. You get Biblio, you get Amazon, you get 40 different sites where books are listed under one heading. So you don't have to go back paging and split screening and all of that. Everything is listed for you there. You just have to know how to interpret those prices. But what you really need if you wind up inheriting a room full, a shelf full of better books, what we would all agree are genuine, valid antiquarian books, then you need another level of pricing information. And that is auction prices, because the auction prices represent actual money, transfer of title and property, um, and at the price listed plus the buyer's premium. So if you have those kind of auction quality books, you need to go to a place where you can find auction records. Well, for the book world, and I'm not mentioning other, there's all kinds of places, Worth Point, this, that, the other. But for the book world, the best place you can go is the rarebookhub.com. You can get a subscription by the year, by the month. There's different ways to subscribe based on your needs and your budget. It's definitely worth the investment if you have, had inherited these books to find out what they are actually worth at auction. And that makes a big difference. In auction history, gives you some very valid referral points. You need to know what went on in that auction. Was it a regular auction? Was there something very special about it? And things like that. But that's the rarebookhub.com. Rarebookhub.com also has a free newsletter, and it is one of the most interesting reads that you can get online when it comes to specifics of the wonderful world of rare books. That's rarebookhub.com. You can get the free newsletter, and you can subscribe to their subscription services. If you like these online reads, like the Rare Book Hub newsletter, I would also suggest that you check out a site called Art Daily. It comes out 7 days a week, and basically it's an online newspaper, but it's all about everything and anything in the world of art, collectibles, antiques. I mean, you could see anything in there from a dinosaur fossil to, some famous firearm owned by some famous or infamous outlaw or general, things like that, from A to Z. So, Art Daily is a great read, keeps you informed, and rarebookhub.com with its newsletter, articles, reviews, recaps of the auction world, for the top 25 lots, which is always a fun read. And there's really great discussions going on in their chat rooms also. So rarebookhub.com, Adall, Via Libre, all of these are sites that you should be familiar with and learn how to use. You are your vocabulary, you are your knowledge in this business. It's an everyday learning experience. I don't think really a day goes by when we have something that we're researching that we're not discovering something new. It's an infinite source of challenges, and it was one of the first things that I noticed about the wonderful world of rare books when I first got into it in the late 60s. And that is, you can't master this in a lifetime. It's absolutely impossible. I don't know what the count is today, somewhere around 2000. By the year 2000 or so, I remember I read an article that said 125,000 books had been published just about the Civil War, since the Civil War. I'm sure by now that number is doubled or tripled, but there's an infinite amount of material out there. How do you find books? Okay, The hardest part of our business, to me anyway, and I think everybody will kind of agree with this, it's also the most fun, and that's the hunt. Where is it that you can go and find good books at cheap prices? Well, it's kind of obvious, but let me lay out some of the things for those of you who might be new. Book sales at libraries, what they call the FOL sales. You can have a small library in a place like Catuit, Massachusetts, that rents an empty building in a shopping center every year and has a book sale. You can go to a place like Waveney Mansion or whatever they do in Jacksonville, where they take over this huge stadium and they have 80, 100,000 books on sale, Goodwill sales, things like that, Friends of Library sales, estate sales, garage sales, thrift shops. Those are the places that we all go to look for books. When you go to an estate sale, um, you never know what you're going to find. I've mentioned this a lot on the show, but my best find ever at an estate sale was my wife, who is sitting next to me right now. And we met at a garage sale. You can't beat that. Lucky us, yes. And so, it's creativity. So what are some of the other things that you can do? Well, if you're more than advanced in your knowledge, I've recommended this forever. Even before I had the radio program, even before I guested on radio back in my AM radio days and all that, I have always said that the best thing that you, as a knowledgeable book dealer, I'm talking about somebody that's got, several years of solid experience in the field, that knows what they're doing, that can walk into a public room full of people and their books and answer all their questions without stumbling or giving bad information. It's not that hard after you've been doing it for a number of years. So what I would recommend to anyone and everyone that can do this, and that's basically a seminar, an ABC seminar on how to identify and sell collectible books that might be found in the home library. I'll give you an example of my history in terms of doing seminars. Many moons ago, many hundreds of thousands of books ago, I was in New York for a while when my sister died, and I was taking care of my nephews. I was there for about almost 3 years. And at that time, I was living in Nassau County. And by the time I left, I had done a seminar at almost every library in Nassau County, Suffolk County, one or two in the Bronx and Queens, and a few others around, Marshalloo Parkway and some other places in the Bronx. Um, if you do a seminar at your local library, how do libraries work? If you're an average city or town, you got a library, a main branch, some satellites, things like that, or just one big library in town, whatever it is. Go up to whoever does the programming and all that, and tell them you want to do an ABC seminar on how to identify and sell collectible books. The patrons can bring books from their home library for a free evaluation. They will pass you around from library to library. I'd make an abstract, dirty joke out of it, but they'd pass you around like a drunken floozy. Okay, boy, well, drunken floozy. What kind of wording is that? Anyway, if you do these seminars at your local library, it will become regional, and it will go even further than that. Um, I have had some of the most phenomenal experiences in people that I've met, friends that I've made, material that we've discovered, found, and were able to sell. And there are other ways. There are other ways to approach this. Also, we'll start
Library shelves. Now, here's Steve the Bookman Eisenstein.
Welcome back, book lovers. Take out something to write with, take out something to write on, copy down our call in number 888 575-4394. That's 888-575-4394. Just an FYI, if you want to spread the word about the show, and we would appreciate it if you do. The show will be replayed later today, Saturday, 4 to 6 p.m. The show is replayed Sunday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 3 to 5 p.m. That's all Eastern time, and Monday from 1 to 3 a.m. So you can catch us all over the clock, so to speak, all over the weekend. And a shout out to our overseas audiences. It's just amazing how many countries we are being heard in, and I'm just kind of flattered by it. So thank you. Um, we left off in the last segment on how you, the listener, if you have the skill set to do it, would do a seminar at your local library. What would an outline of that seminar look like? Well, unfortunately, the video that I did a long time ago was taken down when Facebook cleaned house on videos. I have not had um, I'm not going to say the time, yeah, I'm going to say the time, but the energy and the time in the same breath to do another one. But I will put one up eventually again. Um, and that would where I would have said now just go to the video and kind of set up your own parameters on how you might do it. But I can tell you I've done literally multiple hundreds of them. And as time goes on, you sharpen your skills, you find better sound bites, you find better connectivity between the subject matter, and so on. So, what is a basic outline going to look like? And I like to say that when you teach books, you want to teach it, it's kind of like a pyramid of knowledge. If the bottom and the base of the pyramid is solid, you can go way up and keep building. So, don't build on jello, I guess is what we're trying to say. So, how would that seminar start out? Well, the first thing you would want to show people is the physical book itself and walk them through the physical parts of a book. The front inner hinge, outer hinge, covers, spine, raised bands if they're there on a leather-bound book, and all kinds of other basic parts. And if you think about what parts you're going to describe, you don't have to go into the underneath below the front end paper and one of the board, all of that stuff. You just want to be able to describe what are the visible physical issues in condition if there are any present. The hinge is going, the hinge is gone, it's stained, there's an owner's inscription. You want to lay out the physical parts of a book from the front and rear cover, from the front cover to the rear cover. Touch on them. This is the front cover. This is the paste down end paper. This is a front free end paper. Talk about the importance of end papers, especially if they're missing. This is the frontispiece. This is the title page. This is the copyright statement where you might find a limitation statement in the front or back of the book. So you're going through the book to show its physical parts. And of course, the problems that can occur and the vocabulary you would use to describe those condition issues. Okay, so that's the physical identification in the parts of the book as referring to condition issues and your basic author, title, city, year, edition kind of questions that would, also be shown. You got the physical parts of the book. The next thing you want to show is or talk about would be identification of first editions. That is something you could spend months on, but you only have, 8 minutes out of a 2 hour, 90-minute seminar. Most of my seminars clock around 90 minutes. And, you have to spend some time um, talking about how to identify one publisher's edition from others and points and things like that. So that's another topic that you would be going into, the identification of the first edition, the importance of the dust jacket. It's also important to mention that one of the biggest frustrations a book dealer has early in their careers is when they find like an early Alice in Wonderland, but it's not a first. And you look at it, it's the red cloth, and until you line up all the points that are supposed to be present in the first edition that aren't in your edition, you think you've got a treasure. So you've got to learn how to identify the different publishers, editions, and things like that. So you're teaching the parts of a book. You're teaching the proper format of listing and describing what edition it is. You need to know the importance, as I say, you need to know the importance of the dust jacket. And if you're not familiar with the importance of a dust jacket, this could probably be the most important thing you've heard since you started learning about books. When it comes to fiction, the dust jacket is God. Okay. I don't know how to say it any other way. All right. 95% of the value of a very impressive price of whatever first edition we could be talking about is in the dust jacket. Take a $20,000 first edition in the fine dust jacket, Hemingway, Steinbeck, whatever it might be. Take the dust jacket off of that, you could be in the high hundreds, maybe 1,000 or two in some cases without the dust jacket. But the dust jacket, you got to learn, it's the most important thing when it comes to fiction. Okay, you've got to learn how to describe leather-bound books also. There's a lot to describing a leather-bound book. So after you're teaching about the parts of a book, identification of edition, how to properly list, how to properly research, you then go into some of the things that we spoke about earlier. The next thing, and it's the most informative thing that you can present during this type of seminar, and it's what everybody, the people that come to your seminar, well, I've had as few as six, and as I don't know, as many as about 150. They're there for two major reasons. One is they want to know the values of the books that they brought with them, as far as that goes. But they're also looking in some cases to learn, and become book dealers. So you brought out the parts of a book, how to identify the edition, how to identify different publishers, how to price. The most important thing, besides the books that they bring with them, that they want to know from you as the person presenting this seminar is, what do we look for when we go to estate sales, when we go to garage sales, and we walk into a room, a house full of books, and we're new and we're overwhelmed and everything, we're just grabbing? How do you teach them what to look for? Well, I would say that that's a topic that, of all the topics in the wonderful world of rare books that we've covered on the show, that topic is probably the most frequent one we ever talk about. And that's breaking it down into the various components of what's collectible today. I got a beef with a site like eBay. When eBay first came out, you had like 11 different categories of headings, and one of them was high school yearbooks. We got to thank them for that. But, you know, where do you put other types of books? When we were without computers in the wonderful world of rare books, we learned by osmosis, by rote, by reading the A.B. Bookman's Weekly and finding out what people are looking for by subject matter. And if you looked in the A.B. Bookman Weeklies yearly, at the end of each year, they came out with an annual. They would talk about subjects like American Indians. Okay, so if how would you list a book on American Indians on eBay? On history? I don't know. But if you looked in the back of the AB Yearly, you would probably have seen about 200 different subheadings under the heading of American Indians, from tribes to mounds to artifacts to whatever it might be. So, what is it that people are looking for? when they go to these estate sales and garage sales, and you want to go through it. I'll do it briefly. I've done this so many times, I could probably do this in my sleep. Art, architecture, photography. You're looking for better books in those subject matters. What defines a better art, architecture, or photography book? In an art book, catalog raisonné in the subtitle, meaning it's the complete works of the artist. Lithographs, where you see this volume contains X number of lithographs that were done for this edition. Doodles on the end paper, of course, by notable artists. Architects, you don't want the architects of the world. You want specific things like Frank Lloyd Wright or Le Corbusier or others, that are famous in the world of architecture. Same thing with photography. What are you looking for in photography books? Not the photographs of the world. You're looking for the photographs of specific photographers, from Ansel Adams to Edward Weston, Henri Cartier-Bresson, and I could go on and on and on that list. But you need to know the names on those lists, okay? Now, you've heard many people talking about hunting and fishing books. There are all kinds of hunting and fishing books, but what are the ones that people are really looking for? Those are generally going to be limited editions with subject matters ranging from big game in exotic places, hunting lions in Africa, tigers in India, big game fishing up and down the Zambezi River, or, something like that. Big game in exotic places, whether it's hunting, fishing, those are the things that people are really looking for, preferably earlier, from the 1950s and back, and preferably even earlier than that. It goes on and on. There are fine press books that you need to know the names of. When it comes to American history, you could be talking about regional history, state history, micro-regional histories. Some of these modern books, I mean, I get a kick out of this. Every once in a while, go in somewhere and we got to take the whole house, or just feel intuitive, and there's some modern micro regional history books. um Sometimes I got sticker shock looking some of them up, some 1990s printed wrapper publication, nicely done, and you're looking at it, and all of a sudden you're seeing people listing at 150, 175, so those kind of things you need to know. Cowboys and Indians, good guys, bad guys, anything about a ranch, out in the Southwest, anything about cattle brands, brothels, good guys, bad guys, name it, mining, geology, children's books, illustrated, series, classics, um, anything from magic and MAGIC to MAGIK, spiritual books, reference books, antique books, something you might want to um, keep in mind for yourself. Every once in a while, you go to garage sales, or especially friends of library sales, and they have some phenomenal reference books that they're selling, bibliographies, things like that. You might not need that bibliography at the moment, and it might be ex-library. But if you saw, let's say a Faulkner, a Fitzgerald, a Hemingway bibliography, in a library sale for a buck or two a piece, grab them, stick them on the shelf. One day you will find the book that you need to use that book to reference, and you'll be very happy you did. One of my favorite reference books that we'll probably never use very often is 12,000 Japanese artists and their signatures. So, you never know. At one time, we built up a reference library of about 3,500 books. The unfortunate thing is we thought that that would be part of our retirement fund, as they slowly all got reprinted and and put on computers. So what can you say? Anyway, we'll be back with more stuff.
Bookman Eisenstein.
Welcome back, book lovers. I hope you're having a great weekend wherever you are. If you're out hunting out there, I hope you find some treasures. If you have any questions, take out something to write with, take out something to write on, and copy down this number 888 575 4394. At 11 o'clock, we're going to be joined by Max Ruback. Max is a great friend and he's a very seasoned bookman. His YouTube videos, paper gold, and his auctions are just phenomenal. I got to tell you, Max just fit perfectly into what our business model is. If you are sitting on a couple of thousand books and you're at my age and you're doing okay in the book business, but you could be doing better, but your computer skills are lacking, etc., etc. Max has just filled in a bill for us that's just been, a very pleasurable experience to date, and I see it continuing. So we're going to be joined by Max at 11:05, and we'll cover a lot of ground there. 888-575-4394 if you have any questions. I think what I am going to do is reach over here and I'm going to kind of show you the prize first. It's got some condition issues, but it's a prize. Erotic book plates, okay? It's 109 miniatures from international private collections by Phyllis and Eberhard Kronhausen. Got some foxing to the end papers. It's a reprint from Bell Publishing, but it's the information. This is a great book on erotic book plates, and it's a trivia contest prize if you can answer our trivia contest question. Telephone number is 888-575-4394. That's 888-575-4394. What are the dates of the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair in March of 2025? Be the first person to call me with the dates for the book fair, and the erotic book plate book will be sent to you. Um, Book plates. For those of you who are new, let's do a little dissertation on book plates. They're not always all erotic, okay? Some of them are very just gorgeous. They don't, erotica is another story. Book plates can do a lot to a book in one direction or the other. Okay, where book plates become detrimental is when you start looking at things like the Easton Press and those disgusting book plates that they gave to everybody that we hope and pray they never use. And generally speaking, they usually use them in the better books. Okay, which I don't know why that happens, but it does. So book plates. Okay, if the bookplate belonged to somebody famous, if the bookplate was executed per se by an artist of note, then you can add some dollars to the value of a book, dependent on whose book plate it is. And of course, if there's other marginalia in the book by that person, there are books on not just this one, erotic book plates. There are books, the book plates of Rockwell Kent, the book plates of this person, that person, goes on and on and on. But book plates are collectible. Occasionally, you see them at auction in lots where somebody did collect them, and a lot of times they go for some good money. So be aware that a book plate is kind of like a double-edged sword. In a lot of cases, it can add value, and in a lot of cases, it can detract the value of the book. Um, One of the other questions that we get asked frequently, and we've mentioned this a couple of times in the last few months, but can't see where it can hurt to not repeat it, is what reference books you knew, you have a budget. Let's say we're going to address this two ways. There are those of you who don't have to worry about buying reference books on a budget, and there are those who do. So let's talk about reference books. What are some of the most important reference books that you can have? Well, first and foremost, are two, and they're both as equally important. One of them is a book that will tell you how to identify publishers' various editions. So one of those is first editions of today by Zempel. There's others by Tannen, there's Boutell's, and it goes on and on. That is an extremely important type of book for you to own, especially if you're a beginner, because it tells you how to identify publishers' first editions. Before 1929, publishers did not do anything to identify their first editions. And in several instances, you might have to own four variant copies of a book in different color cloths to know that one of them is the true first edition. So the identification of edition type books are very, very important. The other thing is the vocabulary. I've been an entertainment director. I've been a pool manager. I've been a camp director. I've been a riflery instructor, a restaurant manager, a retail manager, and a whole bunch of other stuff. In almost all those fields, you can kind of BS a little bit and get away with it. But in the book field, you can't. It's impossible. Within 5 minutes, if you're BSing, somebody's going to know it. So you need to know the vocabulary of the trade and the proper uses of those words. There are several books. The ABCs of Book Collecting is probably the most famous, and that's by Carter, John Carter. And there was a more modern one that came out recently by a guy named Berger. And Berger and Carter's latest editions are all illustrated. So not only do you get the vocabulary and the definition, but we're able to, they include images of that. So you want to be able to identify publishers' first editions, and you want to have a good vocabulary source. So those are two important books. Another type of book, maybe you're not ready for it yet, but it's extremely important. And those are books called nom de plumes. Um, it's like a dictionary of nom de plumes. A very funny story. Edie and I, back in the days when she was teaching, we'd get in the car and we'd drive for the summer until time or money or both ran out. We were in Atlanta and we were walking around in somebody's shop, and on the, behind the counter, there were two green volumes, and it was a dictionary of pseudonyms and nom de plumes. And it was green cloth and two volumes, and behind the guy's desk. And I said to God, I wish those was for sale. I didn't know what Edie was doing, but she went around to the guy and said, my husband wants those two books. Are they for sale? And they're sitting behind me somewhere on a shelf, always ready to grab them. So books on the plumes. There's a 7-volume set by Arco that's a reprint of something that was done in the 60s. It's one of the most comprehensive nom de plume type dictionaries you can get. Very important. If you can find them, get them, keep them, especially if you get them cheaply at a garage sale or a library sale. You definitely want to have those in your possession. So those are some of the individual type books. You want something that will give you vocabulary. You want something that will show you how to identify different publishers, and of course, nom de plumes. Bibliographies, I would tell you what I've always said: if you see them cheap at a library sale, pick them up. You could stick them on a shelf and wait till you have use for them, and you'll be very happy that you did that. Um, Now, to go back the other way, let's say you're doing all of this on a budget. There's one book that I've always recommended is the best bang for your buck, and that's Patricia and Alan Ahern's A Guide to Collected Values. Basically, what that has in it is 15,000 descriptions of books with points. Like any other reference book, there's occasional inaccuracies in them. You're not going for the pricing, but you're going for the description of the points. And you're going for the glossary, vocabulary, and other things that would be in that book that would help you along the way. And basically, while they don't go into the great depth of it, like in first editions in Zemple or Carter's vocabulary, there is a tremendous amount of similar type information in Patricia and Alan Ahern's book. I have the 1998 behind me at all times just because it's quick, easy, and faster than a computer, but it doesn't matter. Get the 1998, 2000, get the newer one if you can afford it. But it's a great one-stop shop for reference. Max, I see Max is on board with us right now. Hey, Max,
We're here.
welcome, buddy. We got about 4 minutes left in this segment. What are some of the thoughts that you want to go over that we're going to start talking about?
Great point. I have an auction today at 1 o'clock, actually. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that platform, which is sort of a couple-year-old platform that not everybody knows about. But it's the next big thing that's going to hit the reselling market. It's going to be what eBay and Amazon was doing in 1993, 94, 95, and starting to get its platform growing. And that's what this platform is going to be in another year or so.
Well, is there a name to the platform?
Yeah, of course. It's what not no names. You just got to find it.
I didn't know if that was a trade secret.
No. You and I have talked about this. It's called whatnot.com. Whatnot.com.
Looking forward to seeing it. I'm What's been going on? How did you like what little I've mentioned this before. I sent Max a whole bunch of books, and as I said earlier in the program, if your business model is somewhat akin to mine and you're at the same age I am and you have the same kind of thought process I have, and you're not the most advanced and skilled in computers, I mean, I'm saying it the way it is.
Yeah.
You know, you definitely want to contact Max about talking to him and doing for you what he is doing for us. And I'm going to put a number on it. It's been like around $1,000 a month ever since we met, which
it's been almost that this week for you. We've sold several good books for you this week.
Amen. We'll talk about that off air, but that's another one.
But tomorrow, Steve, is an auction for all this, for not all of the stuff, but for a majority of the stuff you just sent me the other day. So that's going to be a very large payday tomorrow.
I'm looking forward to it. I really enjoyed picking the books out for you. And I'm really curious. Tell everybody, when is the auction tomorrow? I want to actually, I hope I have time. I want to watch it.
If I could get you on the auction, that's going to be a game changer. Well, let me start with today. Today it's at 1 o'clock Eastern. So I'm gonna be with you for about an hour, then I'm gonna jump off and do my final preparations. But today is going to be very interesting because I'm selling complete boxes of books. Each box is about 15 to 20 pounds, but it's all the same category.
Okay.
So 20 pounds of World War II books, 20 pounds of Civil War books, 20 pounds of sci-fi fantasy, so on and so forth.
I like that. Yep. I like that. How many people do you think will be at the auction today?
Well, I have 87 people who have bookmarked it already, not counting the people coming in once I start.
Stay on the line. We'll be back after these commercials.